Turn your mic on.
Okay.
When you're not on.
Talking. So, um,
It stays on.
Seems like you can hit anywhere.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. We are here for our organizational meeting, our first meeting of 2021, January 7th, 2021, the Dublin Board of Education. And this is our first time with our new technology, our live stream technology, ATEM switcher. And thanks to Doug Baker and his team, Scott and Eric, and they'll be helping us out tonight, and hopefully all will go well at home. And so it's really nice for us to be here masked up and socially distanced, but in the same office building, the lobby, first floor, main room of our Emerald campus. So with that, let's call to order, please.
Mr. Valentine,
Here.
Mr. Melody,
Here.
Mr. Weininger,
Here.
Mrs. May,
Here.
and Mr. Harris.
Here. And so, could I please ask Chris Valentine to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. So, last year, our esteemed colleague, Mr. Weininger, started a tradition, and that's that the privilege of being the President Pro Tem. You get to open up the night with some prepared remarks, and that's what I would like to do for a moment. So welcome, everybody, and Happy New Year. This is our organizational meeting for the Dublin School Boards. Following in the President Pro Tem tradition initiated last year by Richard, I'd like to make some opening remarks. During uncertain times, it's important to keep in mind that in Dublin, in Ohio, and in this nation, we should live our values of trust, respect, empathy, understanding, and compassion every day and in every interaction. In the Dublin School District, our goal and expectation is that we all should take these values to heart. We can be an example for school districts around the country, and we will be. This starts with the belief in the power of working together. Even in our differences, we can find common ground through trust and respect. As we start year 2021, our board would like to thank Dr. Hoadley, Treasurer Brian Kern, and the entire administration team here and not here. I'd also like to note that on Christmas Eve around noon, it was a sunny day. I was out for a run. I run often around Dublin Kaufman and Emerald Campus, and this parking lot was full at noon on Christmas Eve with our administrators continuing to work hard to get ready for this year. So thank you for all your hard work. I'd also like to take a moment to thank my fellow board members. Chris Valentine for his steadfast leadership in 2020, and when Lynn, Gwen, and I were in our rookie year many years ago. Lynn May for her empathy and how she always has the right words, no matter whether we are in happy or challenging times. Richard Weininger for his practical and experienced earnestness to make our district the best it can be every day. And Scott Melody for his reflective and constructive mindfulness to ensure the board's decisions are cogent, clear, and based on all information and data. Now I'd like to thank some of the most important people in our district. The year 2020 was a very difficult year for our teachers, staff, families, and our community. In less than 1 week in March, our teachers had to gather their books and materials and teach from home. Then, after a tumultuous coronavirus summer, where this nation revisited and condemned the immoralities and depravities of racism, our teachers began teaching in the buildings in person and remotely. The Dublin School Board has always known that our teachers work every day to provide our students with world-class instruction, a well-rounded education, and to continuously improve in everything we do. Now we know that our teachers can do the necessary, the possible, and the impossible all in a day's work. Above and beyond the call of duty describes our staff, custodians, maintenance, and bus drivers too. These team members are committed to excellence, cleaning the buildings 24 hours a day, and our bus drivers delivered meals to hungry families throughout the pandemic. We also know that our student resource officers are always there for us. Rather than being dispirited, divided, or drained, our teachers and staff responded to the challenge in an energized, innovative, and pioneering fashion. Our culture, the Dublin culture, is to embrace the positive, and we are drawing on the resilience and grit of our teachers and staff. So thank you to the teachers and staff for all your efforts in a difficult year. You made a difference. Thank you, and here's to 2021. So thank you for allowing me to follow the tradition of Richard Weininger as President Pro Tem. Now, let me find the agenda. We are Could I please have a motion to approve the organizational regular meeting agenda?
So move.
Do you say that or do I? The first and the second?
I'll do it.
Okay, you do it.
Mr. Weininger first and Mr. Valentine second.
Let me call the roll.
Yes, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Weininger,
Yes.
Mr. Valentine,
Yes.
Mr. Melody,
Yes.
Mrs. May,
Yes.
and Mr. Harris.
Yes. And 5-0, we have approved the organizational regular meeting agenda. Next, I would like to have any nominations for president of the Dublin Board for 2021. Do we have any nominations?
May I nominate Chris Valentine, please?
Lynn May nominates Chris Valentine. Are there any other nominations? Okay. Could I please have a motion to, and a second, to close nominations for president of the board?
I motion.
Second.
Melody motions, or Weininger seconds. Please call the roll.
Mr. Melody,
Yes.
Mr. Weininger,
Yes.
Mr. Valentine,
Yes.
Mrs. May,
Yes.
and Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Motion to make the vote to elect.
I would like to now make the motion to elect Chris Valentine as president for the 2021 school year. And I will make that nomination.
Second.
So Harris nominated, motioned, and May seconded. Would you please take the roll?
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mrs. May,
Yes.
Mr. Melody,
Yes.
Mr. Weininger,
Yes.
and Mr. Valentine.
Yes.
Excellent. Congratulations. And in a moment, after our vice president is chosen, we will swear you in. Thank you very much and congratulations. So now I'd like to turn to nominations for vice president of the board. And we would like to have any nominations at this point for vice president.
I'd like to nominate Lynn May as vice president of the board.
Chris Valentine nominated Lynn May for vice president of the board. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, could we please have a motion and a second to close nominations for vice president?
I motion.
Second.
So Melody motion, Weininger second. Could you please call the roll?
Mr. Melody,
Yes.
Mr. Weininger,
Yes.
Mr. Valentine,
Yes.
Mrs. May,
Yes.
and Mr. Harris.
Yes. And now, could we please have a motion and a second for the election of vice president of the board? And I'd like to make the motion.
Second.
So Harris motion, Valentine second. Could you please call the roll?
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Valentine,
Yes.
Mr. Melody,
Yes.
Mr. Weininger,
Yes.
and Mrs. May.
Yes.
Excellent. Congratulations. We now have a new vice president for 2021, Lynn May, and a new president for 2021, Chris Valentine. And I think now, if you could please read and deliver the oath for both Chris and Lynn. I'll have to ask the parliamentarian.
I state your name.
I, Chris Valentine,
Do solemnly swear to support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and I will faithfully and impartially perform and discharge the duties as President of the Board of Education for the Dublin City School District, Franklin, Delaware, and Union Counties, Ohio. Congratulations.
thank you.
Normally, we'd have a handshake and a picture moment here, but I state your name.
I, Lynn May,
Do solemnly swear to support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and I will faithfully and impartially perform and discharge the duties as Vice President of the Board of Education for the Dublin City School District, Franklin, Delaware, and Union Counties, Ohio.
I will.
Congratulations.
Oh, Yep. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Good to go. All right, before we begin, I just want to take this time to, again, thank members of the board for their support. This has obviously been a challenging year, and there have been times where we've obviously had disagreements, but I think tonight's a great reflection of our ability to work together through those times, to support one another through those times, and ultimately seek answers and find solutions and figure out the best way to serve this community. So I look forward to a hopefully much smoother 2021, but together with you guys, I feel confident that we're ready to handle anything that's on the road ahead. Moving on to organization procedures. Recommendation to approve the 2021 Board of Education meeting schedule. Is there a motion?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Weininger, second by Mr. Harris. Questions, comments? Obviously, this is subject to change if we learn that throughout the year.
Do we want to add the extra meeting for next week?
Yeah,
Talk about
we talked about through text either Monday, trying to go sometime between 5 to 6, so that we're at the front end of the Buckeyes game. This would be a short meeting that we could also do through Zoom, or we could go Tuesday at 7 o'clock. And are there preferences? Nope. Would everybody be available, say, if we did 5:30?
Yes.
I think we just do 5:30 Monday, get it out of the way, and then be able to hopefully watch the Buckeyes win. So we will.
So we don't need a motion to
We don't need to
amend the meeting
adjust
schedule?
this. That'll be our special meeting. That'll be outside of the dates that are listed in this document. All right. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Weininger,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Melody,
Yes.
Mrs. May,
Yes.
and Mr. Valentine.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Resolution establishing the service fund. Is there a motion?
So move.
Moved by Mr. Weininger. Is there a second?
A second?
Second by Mr. Melody. Questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
I accidentally got happy here with something. It was Weininger Melody, right? Mr. Weininger,
Yes.
Mr. Melody,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mrs. May,
Yes.
and Mr. Valentine.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. I should note for members of the public, these are routine items that we vote on at the beginning of every year as a part of our organizational procedures. Next up, membership in the Ohio School Boards Association. It's recommended the Board of Education renew its membership in OSBA, including subscriptions to the annual briefcase and annual school management news. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr.
Second.
Harris, second by Mr. Weininger. Questions or comments? All right, call the roll, please.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Weniger?
Yes.
Mr. Melody?
Yes.
Mrs. May?
Yes.
And Mr. Valentine?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Membership in the Legal Assistance Fund. Approval of resolution to join the OSBA Legal Assistance Fund. Is there a motion? Moved by Mr. Harris. Is there a second?
A second?
Second by Mr. Melody. Questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Melody?
Yes.
Mr. Weniger?
Yes.
Mrs. May?
Yes.
And Mr. Valentine?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. It's recommended by the treasurer that the Board of Education appoint a delegate and alternate to represent the district at the Ohio School Board's annual business meeting on November 7th, 2021. Do we have any nominations for our delegate and alternate?
I nominate Rick Weininger.
All right, as a delegate.
Do you have a second for that?
I don't think we need to second that yet, correct?
No.
And then alternate, I nominate Stu Harris.
Sounds good.
All right. Do we need to vote that one in now?
Yes, we do.
All right. Is there a motion to approve Mr. Weininger as the delegate and Mr. Harris as the alternate? I will make that motion. Is there a second?
A second?
Second by Mr. Melody. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
Mr. Melody?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Weniger?
Yes.
And Mrs. May?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. It's recommended the Board of Education, in accordance with Section 3313.26 ORC, waive the reading of minutes from previous meetings. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Weininger, second by Mr. Harris. Questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Weniger?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Melody?
Yes.
Mrs. May?
Yes.
And Mr. Valentine?
Yes, motion passes 5-0.
Well, thank you very much for passing that. Otherwise, I'd have to read it every meeting here, so.
Make your life easier. Resolution adopting a standing authorization for the board president for the calendar year 2021. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Weininger, second by Mr. Harris. This enables the district to process state and federal grant applications in a more timely and expedient manner. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Weniger?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Melody?
Yes.
Mrs. May?
Yes.
And Mr. Valentine?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Item 7, standing authorizations for the treasurer. It's a resolution adopting standing authorizations for the treasurer for the calendar year 2021. In similar fashion, enables the treasurer to carry out the necessary duties involving operations, finances, and purchasing. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Melody. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. May. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Melody?
Yes.
Mrs. May?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Weniger?
Yes.
And Mr. Valentine?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Standing authorizations for the superintendent. This is a resolution adopting standing authorizations for the superintendent for the calendar year 2021 to carry out necessary duties involving operations. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. May. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Weininger. Questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Mrs. May?
Yes.
Mr. Weniger?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Melody?
Yes.
And Mr. Valentine?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Board member group health insurance participation. This resolution reaffirming group health insurance participation for board members with premiums being deducted from board member compensation. It's recommended that the Board of Education approve monthly group health insurance deductions from board member compensation as a method for board members to purchase health insurance if they enroll in any of these district healthcare plans. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Harris. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. May. Mr. Kern, just for members of the public, since we probably have more people viewing than have likely heard a organizational meeting. Can you just very quickly explain this for them and how this is set up?
Yeah, so by law, each board member, we can offer our benefits between medical, vision, and dental. It is at the full 100% cost of the board member. So the district does not contribute for that, any of the premium, so that it would be, and then any other associated deductible associated with that is the responsibility of the board member. So that's about it.
Awesome, thank you. All right, notice of board members exercising options for participating in group healthcare plans. This time, if there's anybody who,
We need to vote first.
oh, skipped ahead on it.
Yep.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. May?
Yes.
Mr. Melody?
Yes.
Mr. Weiniger?
Yes.
And Mr. Valentine?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Now for the opportunity for any board member who's going to exercise this option.
I'll go first. I, Rick Weininger, do hereby announce publicly that I will participate in the district group health insurance at my own expense.
So I'll go next then. I, Stu Harris, do hereby announce publicly that I will participate in the district group dental and vision insurance plans at my own expense.
All right. Special committees and assignments. I sent this out previous. We are going to maintain the current duties that we had last year with the exception of Mr. Weininger and Mr. Melody flipping with finance audit, and Mr. Weininger is going to go to finance audit, and then operations, Mr. Melody will go there. So you have that list that was emailed to you. We won't go through each and every assignment, but are there any questions at this time? Okay. Moving on. Opening items for the regular meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the November 9th, 2020 meeting?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Weininger. Is there a second?
A second?
Second by Mr. Melody. Questions, comments? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Weiniger?
Yes.
Mr. Melody?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. May?
Yes.
And Mr. Valentine?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Approval of the regular work session minute meetings from the November 24th, 2020 meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. May. Is there a second?
A second?
Second by Mr. Melody. Questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Mrs. May?
Yes.
Mr. Melody?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Weiniger?
Yes.
And Mr. Valentine?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. All right, COVID-19 discussion. Dr. Hoadley, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Valentine. And let me start off by congratulating you for being president again, and Mrs. May for being vice president. Still great comments to start our meeting tonight. Just want to give an update to members of our board and members of our community on just the various components of COVID. You know, when we were in December, we were talking and very much worried about a post-holiday surge. And certainly, I think we felt that in some ways, and we've not been hit as hard as maybe we had some concerns. But still some time to go on that post-New Year's, and especially with the success of the Buckeyes and maybe gatherings coming up there. We need people to continue to make those tough decisions to socially isolate and wear masks when in groups. But right now, as of today, we had 35 staff members, unfortunately, with COVID and 52 staff members in quarantine. That's across our entire district, including operations. I do want to thank our operations team. A lot of work. Mr. Harris, I appreciate you mentioning the cars in the parking lot. Even though schools shut down, work continues in Dublin City Schools. That includes the winter break. So I know Jeff Stark's team was here and across all of our buildings, really working to clean buildings, sanitize buildings, so that when our faculty and staff came back on January 4th, they were coming back to clean and sanitized buildings. So Jeff, thank you, and thank you to your team for all of their efforts over our break here. Also want to thank our nurses. They worked over break and working through the continual contact tracing with COVID. We had that continue. I'll share personally, I received a call from one of our nurses as I was named as a close contact. I received that call on a Sunday, and the nurse felt bad calling me, and I felt bad that she was working on a Sunday. So it's just the tireless efforts of our nurses. I cannot say enough great things. They, many of them worked over break and just really helped us continue to make sure that we're quarantining. We have people identified that need to quarantine, and that we also know who is out with COVID. So we have been spared somewhat, but still a little bit of time to go on the post-holiday surge. I want to give for members of the board and members of the community a vaccination update. I understand, and there's a little confusion because I think there was some comments made even by the governor today. So when I prepared my comments about 2 o'clock today, that was before the governor's news conference. And so I don't think I'm going to say anything that is contrary to the governor, but I do want to say that I am getting some emails about some of these things. But Franklin County Public Health is handling the vaccinations. We are not going to be provided vaccines as Dublin City Schools to administer ourselves. We know there's some storage issues, some cold storage issues here. But over break, I think it was either the 29th or 30th, Franklin County Public Health came in, used Kaufman High School. Over 500 of our area first responders, medical personnel, police, persons in the medical community were able to be vaccinated. I want to thank Chuck Collier, who Chuck's in the back there. Chuck really ran point for us with Franklin County Public Health to make sure that logistically that went off, and so worked out very well. But those were not Dublin school employees. In working with Franklin County Public Health over break, we have been told that any Dublin City School employee who provides direct health services to children will be classified as Tier 1A. Those are the persons receiving vaccinations right now. We've identified 279 persons to be in Tier 1A. Our nurses, our clinic aides, but also teachers, parapros that are working directly with children in our SLCs. Oftentimes those employees are diapering children, they're feeding children, they're cleaning out feeding tubes. They're really doing a lot of medical type of work in an environment where it's next to impossible to maintain any social distancing, as well as oftentimes difficulty for those children to maintain proper masking. So those employees have been identified. They've been contacted, notified that they will be Tier 1A. We're just waiting right now to upload their information to Franklin County Public Health, who will then contact them. I'm really hoping by this time next week, those persons, those 279, will have received their first round vaccine. We've been made aware that they will have to travel to the Board of Elections, so we'll work to allow release time from school because we want to see hopefully every one of those persons become vaccinated. The remainder of our school staff, and that by remainder, I mean everyone, from every teacher, parapro, bus driver, custodian, those people that work directly with children, they will fall into Tier 1B. And timelines that have been given to us, again, by Franklin County Public Health, really the goal is to have all of those persons receive their first vaccination before the end of January. So again, that's Tier 1B. Again, vaccinations, Franklin County Public Health. And in an ideal world, because we're talking probably around almost 2,000 people here just for Dublin City Schools in Tier 1B, ideally we'd find some ways logistically to have those vaccines given out here in Dublin. The more roadblocks, the more obstacles we can eliminate, the higher percentage of participation we'll ultimately receive. And again, this is voluntary. These vaccinations are voluntary by our employees. We do not have the ability to mandate a person in our employment receive the vaccine. But we're really hoping and we're encouraging, because this is the best really defense, other than wearing the mask, this is the best defense our employees can have to keep themselves safe while at work. And the vaccine, obviously, better than a mask because it's 24/7, 365. So we want to ideally clear out any hurdle we possibly can here. So that's a second. A third thing I wanted to share is our mitigation survey. We've been working on that, got some great data, but we had to pause that over break. And that is actually being migrated from Dublin schools, because we created that survey locally, to the Ohio State CATS program. And many school districts around Franklin County are going to start to use the same survey that was developed here in Dublin. That migration is happening over this week. And so for our teachers, first off, thank you for taking that survey multiple times during the month of December. Some of you, you'll go a week between getting it. Others may get it 2 or 3 days in a row, but it's anonymous and it's random. And that's the randomness, if you will, of random is sometimes you're going to be skipped 2 or 3 days in a row. Other times you may receive the survey 2 or 3 days in a row. I want to thank Heather Tubbs-Cooley, Dr. Heather Tubbs-Cooley, who developed that survey, worked with our staff, created that, and again, that's being moved to the CATS program, so we'll be able to see this, members of the board, as that starts to roll out next week through Ohio State. For members of the board, you were made aware this morning that our data committee met last night. They've made a recommendation, actually clear back in December, that we've already shared with all of you, with all of our faculty and staff, and with our community, to recommend moving to our middle school students to hybrid as of this coming Monday. Again, I want to thank our administrative team, thank our teachers, thank our principals. We've done everything we can to prepare for that. We are ready to go. We're ready to get those middle school kids back to school. Likewise, we received a recommendation last night actually this morning after last night's data committee meeting, to consider moving our high school students back into hybrid as of Tuesday, January 19th. That's the Tuesday after MLK Day. So I want to have some discussion about that tonight, and then the meeting that was discussed, the special meeting earlier in this meeting discussed for early next week, is when the board could consider taking that action here. Regarding our middle school, again, I want to thank everyone for working. Much of that work was accomplished at the building level by our principals, by our teachers, and so members of the board, we're ready to go for that recommendation tonight for your consideration after I conclude my comments. High school, we're going to start to work on that in anticipation of that direction to go. We know if it's not on the 19th of January, we're heading in that direction. That's certainly our goal, to get our kids back to school. And I want to thank our high school teachers specifically, because in the second 9 weeks, so much work, so much effort on live streaming. Our classes have been really worked through. That's been an unbelievable amount of work, and such a great tribute to our high school teachers in their efforts of on the fly learning something new. And so, I'll just share tonight, when we talk about hybrid, ultimately we're talking at the high school level of moving to a 5-day-a-week from our traditional 4-day-a-week hybrid that we had earlier in the year. I've asked Dr. Deagle to lead a planning team so that we can ensure strong principal voice and strong teacher voice on that transition back to hybrid, and figure out what we need to do so that when we can move to a 5-day-a-week hybrid schedule, we can do that with fidelity across all 3 high schools and the Emerald campus. So just apologize for the length of that update. It's been since mid-December since we've been together, and just a lot of things going on COVID-related here in Dublin schools. What questions can I answer tonight COVID-related regarding this report?
Logistically, can you give an update? I know the answer, but I think it's good for the public on the subfill rate and some of the issues that we were running into as we exited 2020.
Yeah, before Thanksgiving, we were really in a pinch point as far as the number of subs in the district, and that was when we were K-12 in face-to-face. Really, since Thanksgiving, since we've only been face-to-face K-5, we have been really not having any problem. We've been 100% almost every single day for our substitute teachers. We know ultimately that's the bottleneck, and that sub situation is not just for teachers in the classroom, it's also for bus drivers, it's for cooks, it's for custodians. All of our team has been working to ensure that we've got a lot of different options, a lot of plans in place, and especially on the teacher side as we start to move and bring back middle school and bring back high school. Ultimately, that is the big issue, is the substitute teacher rate. And one of the things that plays into that, and I apologize, my answer is going to go a little bit long, is the shift in the positive guidance around quarantines that happened by Governor DeWine over break. There's been some studies released, and the new guidance that we just got from Ohio Department of Health today, and we're still working through all the stipulations, but quarantine would not be required if the close contact occurred in a school classroom and both persons, the person that came down with COVID symptoms, as well as the others around, were properly wearing their masks and had social distancing. So the social distancing, there's a little lack of clarity on that. The guidance talks about 3 feet and it talks about 6 feet in the same document. So that will help us in the pitch point of subs. But the main thing that will help us is getting everybody vaccinated. And not just everybody just among our Dublin employees, but as many people as soon as possible across our Dublin community.
So just following up on the subs and bus driver rate, fill rate and all that. So obviously we've been good because it's been just elementary in person for the past month. But so we think bus drivers, everything will be good. So with this proposed change for middle school, will elementary schools be moving back to the normal start time instead of the 8 and 8:30 start time?
Yeah, in fact, we moved that this week. And Dr. Diego, please correct me if I'm wrong. We've socialized that out because when we switched that before, that was in aid for bus drivers, but we're switching that and we've announced those changes so that all elementaries will go back to their original start time and then the middle school will come in after that.
Okay.
Tracy, that was all, correct me if I'm wrong, please, but all that was communicated both internally and externally back in December.
That's correct. Beginning when middle school returns to hybrid.
Yes.
Okay. And then another question, and I know we've all had some discussions and emails about it, but as far as cleaning goes, the building cleaning, what other steps have been taken over the last several weeks to ensure that staff is comfortable with the cleaning taking place on a daily basis?
Yeah, that's a great question. Jeff, let me start on the answer and then you'll fill in if you wouldn't mind here. So one of the things we did, and that's where this mitigation survey really was beneficial, because we didn't only have data coming from people checking circles on a Likert scale, but we had narrative comments. One of the common narrative comments we had were just concerns and questions around the cleaning protocol, largely at our elementary level. And we've been using some outside staffing firms at our elementary level, especially on second shift, or I should say exclusively on second shift in 11 of our 14 elementary schools. A lot of it was just because we had switched to a different model, there were a lot of questions. And we, in the pandemic, as we were focusing on other things, we hadn't clearly got the answers to the building level, to principals and to teachers. And so what we did in December, and Jeff, I have to give you and Shalina great credit. We just had a meeting. We brought all of our elementary principals in. We brought Tyler Wolf, our elementary director, in. And we just did a Q&A. And we really pulled back the curtain and just had a great conversation so that we empowered our principals with that information. One of the things was just a lack of understanding, and so we're bringing in the cleaning crews to each of these buildings so that a principal, teachers could be a part of this if they would like, and actually go through a classroom. And let's clean a classroom and let's make sure that, that we've demystified what's happening on second shift. We also made some protocol changes. One of those were cleaning of tabletops, and that was something that we were not asking to be done earlier. Work was being done by the teacher. Now that's going to be done every night by the cleaning company here. So that's a large component, but Jeff, fill in the blanks of what I've missed, please.
Yeah, so one of the things we explained to the principals is, this, just like the pandemic came quickly, so did the hiring of these firms. Everything came very, very quickly. And when we brought it on in October and November, half of them came on in October, half of them in November. So when we met with the principals in December, some of them only got it for 2 or 3 weeks. So what we explained is we created a scope for all these companies. The scope was never set in stone, but you have to start somewhere. And we wanted the scope to last for 30, 60 days just to see what was working and what was not working. So now with this meeting with the folks, we're going to start to customize it per school. Some schools would like this extra done, some schools would not like this done. There was some confusion about what we had the daytime people focusing on and the night shift focusing on. all in all, the feedback we received from the principals was actually very positive of the work that was being done at night. There was just some miscommunication of things that were being missed, and the miscommunication was they thought we were directing it to be missed on that for some type of reason, and we weren't. It just was a spot for us where we didn't think it was a critical item, but to them it was. And that's easy enough as just fixing the scope. So we do think we're turning the corner. Mr. Melody, you brought up a phenomenal suggestion that we met right with the principals about having like a to-do list, you know, when you sign off that the room has been cleaned. And that was just very coincidental when you brought that up, because it was the same suggestion that really came out of that meeting. And we're going to start to roll that out slowly, just because think about how many classrooms there are, how many postings there have to be, who's going to take down the postings, how are we going to collect them. So we're going to start rolling that out at Scottish Corners probably next week. And the reason we're doing one school is we don't want to make a mistake and then after we tell everybody what the protocol is. But we're going to start that protocol again for everyone else. What that protocol is there will be, like you'll see at a restaurant, on a restroom door, it'll have when this room was last cleaned and by who and what time. We're going to start with restrooms, and then we're going to add on classrooms. And we're trying to figure out now about best ways to post them, how often they get filled out, all that type of thing. So we're starting that protocol there too. So all in all, it's very positive. There's going to be some scope changes, and we're probably going to make some more scope changes in the next 60 days until it starts to settle in. And again, this is all very fresh, but it was surprisingly positive, and positive even from our head custodians. So as these crews start to understand our crews and start to work together, it's very much like charcoal and starting to gel. Oh, and by the way, in the deep cleaning, we did a tremendous amount of deep cleaning over the last 3 weeks, not just with some of the outside firms, but with our own folks. Specializing in areas like the locker room, the athletics, some of the common areas, some classrooms like the SLC room. We really did a deep clean focus just as we took advantage of this time in the building. And we'll do that again over any type of 3-day break like Martin Luther King Day, spring break, President's Day, such that we're going to keep taking advantage of those times off.
All right, great, thank you for the update. And I guess I just.
Chris,
I was going to say, I just had one last question about the Franklin County Public Health, I believe, has their stay-at-home recommendation extended through January 23rd, I believe. Was there any consideration of waiting until that expires before we go back to full?
That really
hybrid
didn't
model?
come up in our conversations. That's more of a stay-at-home nighttime type of thing. And honestly, we've been doing a lot of other activities such as extracurriculars, and so we just didn't factor it into our decision.
Okay, thank you. Rick?
I think Doug took care of my concern. So
All
we
right.
could hear.
Any additional questions or comments? So moving forward, our game plan is middle school will be going back if the resolution passes on this coming Monday. And on Monday, we will be meeting again for a special meeting in order to vote on the resolution as it relates to high school moving back on Tuesday, the 19th. And along with that, with the high school, we are, to echo Dr. Hoadley's comments, looking at making that a 5-day instead of 4-day in order to maximize that time for our students.
I just have a question about the resolution. Sorry. Question about the resolution. Down at the bottom, it says, "Now therefore be it resolved that elementary will continue in the hybrid learning mode for the second semester." Does that leave us room to go into full, even if this is worded this way?
Okay, go ahead.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yep.
just
You
wanted to
have the
double-check.
full discretion as a board. And again, remember as a board, if things would go crazy, I have the ability, you've given me the ability to pull back.
Right.
You always have the ability as a board through your vote to move to hybrid to full-time or remote to hybrid.
Just double checking, thank you.
So on the resolution, I was going to ask that, a follow-up question on that. So Todd, you indicated that you have the ability to pull back like in the previous resolution. So that still stands from the previous resolution because I don't read that verbiage in this resolution.
Yeah, you've given me that throughout the entire pandemic.
Okay, just wanted to confirm. Thank you.
Also in the resolution, could we change in the 4th paragraph down on the 2nd page, the last sentence in to by, take that in out and put by. And then on the third of the therefore it's resolved, on the third item there, can we change, we're saying we're meeting in late Jan, we're not, we're meeting on Monday. So
Okay.
can we change that to reflect the
Yeah, the
proper
meeting
date?
date. What was that first one, Rick? I didn't get to write it down as we were going here.
Instead of, in the fourth paragraph, fourth paragraph, last line, change the in to by,
2, 3, and 4.
model for high school by late January. That's our goal.
By late January. Yep, I see you.
And then the third item,
Yep.
just to reflect the proper date.
11 and 1, 2, 3. All right. Any additional questions or comments? Again, want to thank all the folks who are working on our medical committees for the time that they're putting forth. Their guidance is greatly appreciated. With that said, I will now read this resolution. Whereas the Dublin City School District Board of Education adopted previous resolutions setting forth the considerations and processes for the district's transition among the various student learning models for the 2020-2021 school year, and resolved that the board would make all decisions regarding movement among the school-based pathway options identified in the district's responsible restart plan. Whereas the board has continued to consider the guidance from federal, state, and local health experts, including the guidance and recommendations from the Dublin City Schools COVID-19 Committee recommendations to the superintendent, and review of local data through the district's participation in the Ohio State University COVID-19 Analytics and Targeted Surveillance Program, better known as CATS, as it relates to COVID-19 and the safety of students in school, with the goal to have students physically present in school to the safest extent possible. Whereas the ever-growing data, research, and guidance from the health experts demonstrates that students are safe in school for face-to-face learning when safety protocols are in place. Dr. Robert Redfield, CDC Director, stated on November 19th, 2020, that the CDC does not recommend school closures and that, quote, for kids K through 12, one of the safest places that they can be from the CDC's perspective is to remain in school. Likewise, the following was said in a joint statement between the City of Columbus Public Health and the Franklin County Public Health on November 6, 2020. Quote, despite rising case numbers, we believe that it is safe for kids to go back to and remain in the classroom as long as all safeguards are followed, including wearing a mask and social distancing. The data shows that children and teachers are safe in the classroom. Our behavior outside of schools puts them and all of us at risk. Whereas the Data Metrics Committee met on December 16th, 2020, and reviewed the considered above referenced data, research, and guidance, as well as discussion and feedback from the many district staff participating in that meeting, and the detailed December 15th, 2020 COVID-19 science update published by the CDC. Whereas the Data Metrics Committee gave its recommendation to the superintendent that an incremental approach to the advancing in-person school learning from youngest to oldest students based upon existing data and rates of infection and quarantines among older children was appropriate beginning with the second semester of the school year. Whereas the Data Metrics Committee recommended that it would be appropriate to keep elementary students in their current hybrid learning model and transition middle school back to the hybrid learning model effective January 11th, 2021, with a goal to transition to the hybrid learning model for high school by, this is the section that you wanted to revise, Rick, by late January 2021. Whereas the Data Metrics Committee cautioned that the community's commitment to maintaining safety protocols is crucial to slow the spread and put the district in the best position to maintain the schedule set forth in the resolution. Whereas the board believes that student learning is best achieved face-to-face and that the recommendation by the Data Metrics Committee offers a safe opportunity for student learning during this time. Now, therefore, be it resolved as follows. 1, the elementary school will continue in the hybrid learning model for the second semester of the 2020-2021 school year. Again, and this is not in the resolution, but to echo Mrs. May's comments and Dr. Hoadley's answer, this does not limit us from moving forward into full return upon the opportunity to do so. Number two, middle school will return to hybrid learning model January 11th, 2021. And lastly, the board will consider a transition of high school to the hybrid learning model at its meeting on January 11th, with a potential restart of hybrid for high school students on Tuesday, January 19th. Now, therefore, be it further resolved that achieving the schedule set forth above is dependent upon community cooperation and slowing the spread of COVID-19, and so the board strongly encourages everyone to follow the state of Ohio's Stay Safe protocols. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. May. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Harris. Questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Mrs. May?
Yes.
Mr. Harris? Yes. Mr. Melody?
Yes.
Mr. Weiniger?
Yes.
And Mr. Valentine?
Yes. Motion passes 5-0. Public participation? No one's here. We do have Kevin Corvo, I think. Are you now back on the beat for Dublin City Schools? Good to see you again. It's been several years. All right, Board of Education committees. Anybody have anything that they want to report out on? All right, moving on to superintendent's reports.
Thank you again, Mr. Melody. Again, let me welcome our members of our public here tonight. I want to publicly thank Doug Baker, Eric Starkey, Scott Gill, Doug, all of your team for putting this together. It's nice to be able to have a board meeting where we're not separated, and while the technology was great, and it greatly allows members of our public to get an insight into the work of our Board of Education, we didn't have a safe way to do that up until now. And so, guys, thanks for all of your efforts on working through this technology, putting it together, and again, allowing us to have face-to-face board meetings and allowing our community to observe the important work of Dublin City Schools. Members of the board, I have just a couple information items for you tonight. I've got a first reading recommendation on 3 policies and then 1 resolution for your consideration tonight. The 2 FYI updates I want to share with you very quickly both relate to hiring. First off, next week on Monday, January 11th, our HR office will be putting out the posting for our Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And that is an extremely important position for Dublin City Schools. I want to thank our HR team. They worked hard to put the the job description that you as a board approved back in December. We're going to be posting that nationally using a lot of new tools for making sure that we have a really, really strong spread across the country in awareness of this important opportunity for somebody to come in to Dublin and lead these important efforts. From a timeline standpoint, we expect it'll be 6 to 8 weeks of posting. And we'll use an interview process very similar to how we interview principals, which is we are firmly believing in the inclusion of our community, inclusion of faculty and staff, and inclusion of our administrative team. So as we go to the interview process, which will probably be sometime in mid-March for this position, we'll identify parents, teachers, administrators for involvement in this. We then anticipate, usually we'll bring either 6 or 9 candidates to that level, identify 2 finalists, bring those up to the central office, and it would be ideal if we can have a recommendation to you either in late March or early April. Now, again, we're posting this nationally, so we don't know where the ultimate location of our current or our next DEI director will be. If it's local, that may allow for a more quicker onboarding. If it's a person that lives out of state or even, not in driving distance to Dublin, we'll have to go through that process of allowing them to transition from their current position and relocate to Dublin. So it may be June, depending upon where that person currently lives. But again, we hope to have an employment recommendation for your consideration either in late March or early April. Likewise, very, very similar time and process for the posting that will also go out on Monday, January 11th, which is for our first principal for Eversole Run Middle School. So again, that will go out on Monday, same time frame, posted for about 6 weeks. We will use parents, we will use teachers, we will use administrators, we'll use a committee approach to hiring, identify 2 finalists, and again, late March, early April, hopefully bring a recommendation to you for the first principal of Eversole Run Middle School. So I want to share, those are 2 really important postings. I want to thank the efforts of our HR team in, again, working up the job descriptions and all the work that they do in making sure that the process yields great candidates for consideration by our community and ultimately great candidates for your consideration for hiring and bringing into our Dublin City Schools education family. Moving along, first reading tonight for 3 policies. I sent copies of these to you in late December. These are largely the result of changes to the law, specifically House Bill 318, regarding the discipline of students. In Policy 5610 and 5610.03, both add language around the restriction for disciplinary action for students, young students, specifically grades K through 3. Also in 5610 and 5611, changing some verbiage, a little bit more legalese verbiage here, preponderance of evidence, which is not an unfamiliar term with our administrative team, but it will be something that we will be adding into the bylaws for this, the administrative guidelines for this, as well as just providing some professional development, of which Dr. Deagle will lead at a future admin meeting here. So this is the first reading. Please, if you would, look over these policies, and we would expect on our next meeting, not the January 11th, but our January 19th meeting, that these 3 policies could come in front of you for consideration and possible approval. Finally, tonight, I want to conclude my comments. I do have one recommendation for your consideration tonight, and that is a resolution. We have a parcel of property that is currently located in the Buckeye Valley School District. The owners of the parcel have submitted an application to the Ohio Department of Education to have that property moved into Dublin. This is on the north side of our district, and we know that Dublin is a great district to live in. We also know that we have overcrowding situations, and in the past, on many, many occasions, we've had to work to make sure that frankly, our boundaries are solid. Sometimes we're making sure, like in the case of the win-win, that we fight to make sure that our homes stay in Dublin. Other times where we've had people that want to move in, we've had to say, we're sorry, but right now there's no room in the inn. So this is a resolution that would signify to the State Board of Education, really before the hearing, that our board, really are not looking to expand the boundaries of Dublin City Schools and taking in additional homes and or additional students. What questions might you have on the policies, on the hiring timelines, and or the resolution for your consideration tonight?
Dr. Hoadley?
Yes.
We talked a little bit about the land transfer and the legal procedures, and so I just thought I might go through a little colloquy with you so that people can understand what's happening here, because we don't do this very often. And so we have property owners that are currently in the Buckeye Valley School District, and they're petitioning to ODE to be in the Dublin School District. And the petition that the landowners file goes first to Buckeye Valley School District, right? To forward to ODE.
I don't know that for sure. I think that it goes directly to ODE, but I'm not 100% on that, Stu.
Okay, and so now, I read in some of the memos that it's filed with Buckeye Valley and then it goes to ODE.
Okay.
So now, then ODE sends out a scheduling order or sets a hearing date. And so that's been set or waiting to hear about that, right?
Correct.
And so, and I'm walking through some of these prerequisite questions, and so Dublin, our board has a role as well, and could you give a brief overview of our role?
Sure. I mean, ultimately, from my understanding in working with legal counsel, this board, you will have the final say in this process. Regardless of what the hearing officer makes a decision upon, it's ultimately the role of the Dublin City Board of Education to decide whether or not they want to expand the boundaries and allow this parcel to be brought into our school district.
And so during the conversation that we had, I asked you the question of why would we vote before the hearing? Because, as you noted, ultimately, whether it's now or after the hearing, we have, in a way, veto power over any decision, because the decision, if the chronology is that the petitioners file with Buckeye Valley and then it goes to ODE, ODE has a hearing, and the hearing officer says, yes, I agree that these property owners can go to Dublin City Schools. At that point in time, Dublin City Schools could vote after the petition has had a hearing and the officer has issued an opinion, and we would say either yes or no. And so what we're doing today is we're going to say yes or no before the hearing, before the landowners and the two school districts get together to discuss this and have the hearing. And so I asked you, well, why would we do that? And, well, why don't you explain what you said?
Well, I think for two reasons, and really it's the benefit of the homeowner. I mean, if the decision of the board is ultimately going to be, as it has in the past, to not take in additional property into our school district, by making that decision known up front, I think it helps the homeowner. Number one, it controls expectations so that they don't go into a hearing and maybe even have the hearing officer rule in their favor and then feel like we're pulling the rug out from under them at the end. Also, a lot of times these families bring legal counsel to this. They're incurring an expense. And so rather than having somebody go through an emotional process and expending or putting a monetary investment, by being upfront, we save them some of the emotions and also some of the dollars invested.
And so I think that's very important for everybody to know that, and that's very helpful. So just one more question then. When we look at land transfers, whether it's a large neighborhood like Ballantrae, where from time to time there'll be several residents in Ballantrae that will approach us or send us letters, or a single homeowner on a different boundary, not, Ballantrae is in the Hilliard School District. Here we have a property owner who's in Buckeye Valley. Why we have made a point of being very particular and in fact have not approved any of these land transfers, and could you discuss why that is? What is the fairness? In other words, if I'm a landowner and I say, well, that's not fair,
Sure.
What do you say?
Sure, and I think really there's two pieces, and looking at the micro with the homeowner is one thing, but looking at it macro on really what's best for the Dublin district as a whole, that's really where our focus needs to be, and sometimes that's a tougher an individual landowner to understand, but ultimately it can create a precedent. You allow one piece of property in, and then the next one comes about, and it's hard to start saying ultimately no if you've allowed and said yes, yes, yes to multiple land transfers. The second piece is also, and this is a little bit more globally across the state of Ohio, You know, sometimes land is transferred from one school district to another. It's not common, but it's also, it does happen. And I think it always works best when both districts are in agreement that this is a good thing. And Buckeye Valley has also signaled, while not by official board resolution, but they've signaled in their comments to us that they don't want to lose this property. They have a rather large district. They have multiple of their homeowners looking at transferring, whether it be to Dublin or some of their surrounding districts. And so part of this is also being the good public school neighbor across the board as well. So there's some micro and there's some macro issues that both come in the rationale of being upfront with this and just, again, trying to avoid any precedent that would put us in a situation that ultimately could lead to higher costs to our own taxpayers and more challenges within our instructional program of trying to educate more and more children.
Thank you very much. That was very helpful, and I really appreciate it. I know that you've had a busy first week back, and you took an hour to explain all of that when I was trying to learn what was happening and how the legal procedure goes and the X's and O's behind that. So thank you very much for taking the time now and in the past couple days to do that. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Stu.
Thank you.
It's recommended by the superintendent, the Board of Education, approve the attached resolution of intention to reject the proposed transfer of school district territory request. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. May. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Weininger. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. May?
Yes.
Mr. Weininger?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Melody?
Yes.
And Mr. Valentine?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Reports from the treasurer's office.
Yes, a couple things off of or one thing off the agenda. Our audit report just came back last week, and we have a clean audit report again. So no management letter comments, no reportable conditions or anything like that. And that's what we strive to do to make sure the accountability to our taxpayers and out there. So we feel good about that, and I congratulate my staff on and also the buildings and the departments. And it's a joint effort to do all those internal controls and everything that you have to do when it comes to spending and receiving money in and stuff like that. So congratulations to everyone out there. On the agenda this evening, we do have the alternative tax budget for fiscal year 22. This is a statutory requirement that you have to do every year. Actually, some counties don't even require it anymore. Franklin County requires this alternative method, but really, as you look at it, it is essentially taking your 5-year forecast that you just passed in November and putting it in different time frames in the document, but also showing permanent improvement to levy that we've talked about from time to time, especially Mr. Stark and some of his construction and maintenance activities, and also our bond fund, or I should say our debt service fund, and kind of talking about our debt schedule. So everything is just, like I said, it's a statutory document, but it is still required that it is to be done in Franklin County. Also on this evening's agenda is some appropriation increases, and these again are good news stuff. The local revenue one is a grant received in Mr. Andrus's department to do some good work in their area, and also the broadband grant, which you previously approved a grant with that. Not every district utilized all the funds, so there was remaining funds sent out. We were approved for an additional almost $150,000. So. And that's to extend our Wi-Fi in many areas, especially in our middle schools and high schools around the grounds, but throughout the district. So, any questions on the agenda this evening on the Treasurer's Office side?
All right, there being no questions, it's recommended by the treasurer, the Board of Education approve items 16B and 16C. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. May. Is there a second?
A second?
Second by Mr. Melody. Questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Mrs. May,
Yes.
Mr. Melody,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Weininger,
Yes.
and Mr. Valentine.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Dr. Deagle.
Good evening, everyone. This evening, I am asking you to approve a contract with School Links. As you remember last May, you passed a new policy 5460.02, which requires, should I keep talking? Can you hear me? If you don't mind, I'll start again. Last May, you passed a new policy 5460.02, which requires our district to develop a graduation plan for each student enrolled in grades 9 through 12. Good? Okay. The plan will be developed jointly by the student and a district representative, and will remain in effect for a high school diploma. The plan will be updated annually and will describe the targeted academic pathways for the student to meet graduation. So we're asking for your approval of the School Links contract this evening because it will provide the tools and the resources that we need to fulfill this obligation. In addition to the development of graduate plans, School Links will integrate with the Common Application for our students. It will send transcripts and letters of recommendations to colleges. It will track college application information, and it will allow communication and collaboration with our families, as well as be a tool in our K-12 career advising vision. I can tell you this is something we don't currently have with Naviance as a parent of a senior, and so I really look forward to what School Links can bring for our parents of seniors and for our seniors. Because School Links does improve upon what we have with Naviance, we will not be renewing our Naviance contract when it expires in the spring of 2022. I also ask for your approval this evening of the High School, College, and Career Handbook, and I'm happy to answer any questions on either that or School Links this evening.
All right, there being no questions or comments, thank you, Dr. Deagle.
Thank you.
It's recommended by the superintendent, the Board of Education approve items 18A and 18B. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Weininger, second by Mr. Harris. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Weininger,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Melody,
Yes.
Mrs. May,
Yes.
and Mr. Valentine.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Reports from the Department of Human Resources.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Good evening, members of the board, Dr. Hoadley. For your consideration, we have 2 retirements on the Human Resources agenda tonight for your approval. First is Tony Basutti. He's a business teacher at Dublin, Scioto, who's retiring with 26 years in Dublin City Schools. He was part of the 1995 inaugural staff at Dublin, Scioto, and he was the first basketball coach at Dublin, Scioto High School. We also have Sue Masters, current head cook at Scottish Corners, been with Dublin City Schools for 24 years. We're recommending the hiring of 2 classified staff members for the positions of crossing guard and library aide. We also have 3 classified staff resignations on the agenda, resigning for personal reasons. We have 4 unpaid leave of absences, as well as a few salary changes for certified and classified staff members. There are 3 supplemental contracts and 5 pupil activity supervisor contracts on the certified board agenda for your approval. And then there are 3 stipends on the board agenda for your approval as well. The first is the ROCKS grant that we brought to you on December 14th. Helps girls with the provision of resources that will enable them to navigate adolescence and beyond. It was approved again on December 14th. This is a revision for us to add 4 additional staff members to this grant. There's also a DCS virtual course development for Art Foundations grant. Will compensate teachers for their role in reviewing, discussing resources, pacing content standards alignment, and identification of instructional gaps. And then the DCS virtual course development for ACT, SAT, prep, and literacy skills. Again, compensating teachers for their role in reviewing, discussing resources, pacing, content standards alignment, and identification of instructional gaps. Any questions that I can answer for you from the Human Resources Department? Thank you.
All right, there being none, it's recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve items 20A, 20B, and 20C. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. May. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Harris. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. May?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Melody?
Yes.
Mr. Weininger?
Yes.
And Mr. Valentine?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Reports from the Office of Public Information. Mr. Baker.
Good evening, Mr. Valentine, members of the board. We had been communicating quite a bit before break about the possibility of middle school returning to hybrid on the 11th. And so that's been out there in the community, but with your decision this evening, and along with your discussion regarding high school on the 19th, we will begin a new communications plan later tonight and tomorrow and over the weekend. We've already started on social media once your decision was made this evening on the 11th. There'll be a district-wide email tomorrow. Middle school principals will have videos that will go out. It'll be in all building and district newsletters. So we will keep pushing to make sure everybody understands middle school is back in hybrid for students who have chosen in-person learning for second semester. RLA will continue, obviously, for students who have chosen that option. That's something important we have to keep putting out there as well. I am proud to say I've been working with Mr. Harris on a newspaper column regarding our teachers and their excellence, and so that'll be out here in the next couple of 3 weeks. I'm happy to report on that. Last night I met with the Community Education Physician Committee that I lead, and we talked about doing a series of videos regarding vaccines, and we thought the messenger would best be physicians, and so we'll further those details out. We did talk about that last night as something to coincide with the vaccine becoming available to staff. So stay tuned on that. And I'd like to thank Eric for completing a recent series of commercials for Emerald Campus as students are picking courses right now. And so if you look on our YouTube channel, we've got lots of good commercials for the campus and the latest one being, What About IB? And finally, a positive story from Glacier Ridge tonight. Again, this is another video, and this was an idea of Pete Curdy and the staff and some students simply to record words of encouragement. Just positive phrases and thoughts all strung together in about a 3 or 4 minute video. That really came out nice, very cute, very positive. So please take a look at that when you can. Thank you.
Any questions or comments for Mr. Baker? Once again, thank you to you and your staff for helping get all this technology ready so that we're able to meet in this fashion. Items for board discussion.
Dr. Hoadley, could you share a little bit of a conversation that we had regarding your efforts for planning for high school and other levels to possibly come back full-time? So I know that you guys have been involved in looking at what needs to be done for those things. So just a couple comments on that.
Sure, and I want to clarify my understanding of your question, Mr. Weininger. So not hybrid, but full-time.
Well, the whole spectrum.
Okay,
So
okay.
just share your planning.
Sure. I mean, well, one, as mentioned earlier, I mean, our first step will obviously be hybrid, and you as a board will have consideration of that question on Monday of next week. Been working, just like we did with the middle school. We got to make sure that our facilities are ready to go, transportation, food service. That's something where hybrid for elementary and middle school is so different than or hybrid for high school, because hybrid at the high school, the kids are there all day long. And so at the elementary school, it's more of a grab and go. Some children eat in the school. At a Kaufman High School, when we're in hybrid, you could have 300 kids in the cafeteria. So there's just a tremendous difference in hybrid for the high school. So working to make sure that we've got the furniture positioned correctly, all those intangibles around operations, Jeff and his team have been working nonstop. The fact that we've done it already makes it really much easier transition than at the beginning of the year than when we were on our orientation. Looking at full-time, going all in there, that's really going to be, I think, a vaccination-dependent process. And that's why I really want to encourage not just all of our faculty and staff, but really across our community. We have to have a high rate of vaccination across our society. And that is just so important so that the vaccine takes root. But also just driving COVID numbers down through what we're doing here. We're social distancing, we're wearing our masks, proper hand hygiene, all those things. It's important that the community continue to help us in this movement here. But once we get the vaccination in place, I think we're ready to start to look at the question of full in, most likely not any way, shape, or form before the beginning of March. We're going to have to 2 rounds of a vaccine. That's going to take 4 weeks apart. So, hybrid is going to be something that once we are able to transition in for the high school, if it is January 19th, that'll be really the best we'll be able to do until that double vaccine occurs. But by March 1st, I'd like to think with the vaccine, with our community driving COVID numbers down, with the awesome work of our teachers, I think the board, you'll be able to consider that opportunity there. I think we're learning new things every day with the quarantine assistance, changes of policies. So that is our goal, to get our kids back to school 5 days a week, K through 12. And so not just the high school, but it looks different in all grade levels there. So specifically for high school, once the vaccination is in place, I think that's when that conversation will really be able to go forward in earnest.
Thank you, Dr. Hoadley. It is, from my view, the board's objective to get kids back in school 5 days a week. And I really appreciate that that's constantly in your vision and in your planning to try and get to that point. And we hope to be successful in doing that as soon as possible, but we are going to do it safely, and I appreciate all the planning that goes into that. Thank you.
And if I could add one more thing, and Doug made this qualifier, but oftentimes when we talk about 5 days a week, which I think we all agree, that's our goal, sometimes our RLA parents think we're talking about them. And I just want to reinforce, for those that have chosen RLA, that was a semester decision, K through 12. And so we tried to really reinforce in our communication back in October that if you were choosing RLA for the second semester, that was a full semester decision. If you're choosing full in for the second semester, that may be hybrid, that may be remote, that may be full in, and that our goal is to get kids in full in safely across our K-12 spectrum.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, future agenda items. Public participation for issues not on the agenda. There being none, executive session. In accordance with Ohio Revised Code 121.22G, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, the Dublin Board of Education will go into executive session to consider 1, the B, employment of a public employee or official. Is there a motion? Moved by Mrs. May. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Harris. And the board will have no action coming out of executive session. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. May?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Melody?
Yes.
Mr. Weiniger?
Yes.
And Mr. Valentine?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. Where are we gonna do?
We'll go up to the 4th floor.
Okay, I was gonna say, I don't think that office is gonna suffice.